Shellcast.
Blue jays sometimes sound like red-shouldered hawks, but you hear that? That's a little shoulder hawk, red-shoulder hawk imitation.
Yeah?
Yeah. Sometimes they do that to scare away birds and get whatever insects are around.
Uh-huh.
So I think we have here like 4 of them.
All right.
They're very interesting. They have a lot of different sounds. Okay. So
Well, hey, let's just kick this off here.
Sure.
So, welcome to Shellcast, the podcast that's a beach break for your ears. But actually, this episode's more like a bird break for your ears, don't you think? I'm your host, Jackie Parker, and I work for the Lee County Visitor and Convention Bureau in promoting Fort Myers islands, beaches, and neighborhoods. Our website is visitfortmyers.com. I'm here in Southwest Florida, Fort Myers to be exact, about 2 hours south of Tampa. And in this episode of Shellcast, we're at 6 Mile Cypress Slough Preserve in Fort Myers. And what's a slough? Glad you were wondering. A slough is a long, narrow wetland with slowly flowing fresh water. The entire preserve here is over 3,500 acres of intermingled wetland and upland ecosystems. The appearance of sloughs changes within the seasons from dry October to May to wet June to September. And during the rainy time of the year, the slough catches and slowly filters rainwater on its way towards Estero Bay. And animals adapted to life in the wetlands, like alligators, turtles, otters, and wading birds, live at the slough year-round. And additionally, many types of migratory birds use the slough as a rest stop and feeding area. And I'm joined today at the slough by Dr. Jose Padilla-Lopez. He's a volunteer and ardent birder. And I pulled up the following information on him from sloughpreserve.org. Dr. Padilla-Lopez, he wants me to call him Jose, is a pediatrician who moved to Southwest Florida from Puerto Rico in 1991. He liked nature photography, and in his spare time, he would come to places like the slough to take photos before digital, and he started identifying the birds that showed up in pictures, soon got binoculars, and he's got some right now around his neck, and he left the camera home and started keeping lists and buying bird books and became a birder. And he became part of the Lee County Bird Patrol, a group of volunteers who do bird census in Lee County Conservation 2020 properties. And his Bird Patrol reporting area is the slough, which is where we are right now. And he wanted to increase the interest in birding for young people and started doing bird walks for kids about 5 years ago. Is that right?
yes.
And for this episode, we're calling it It's for the Birds. We will discuss birding in Lee County with Jose, and we're going to emphasize 5 points. Why birding is good for you, what you need to start birding hotspots in Lee County, and a few of the best birds to be found in Lee County, and finally, how to meet other local birders and learn from them. With that lengthy introduction, Jose, thank you for being with us this morning on Shellcast.
Oh, I'm very grateful to be here and spread the good news about birding.
Yeah, you're all decked out. You've got your birding cap on. It says "No Bird Left Behind," and you've got your binoculars on, and we're ready. And we're looking around the parking lot right now.
Yes. Okay, so why is birding good for you? Birding is awesome. It brings you out in nature. It lets you exercise. There's a warbler flying there. Oh, that's a gnatcatcher. You see, little plump body, long tail, moving around. It's a gray bird with a very long bill. Blue-gray gnatcatcher. He's a year-round resident in the slough. So you get outside, you breathe fresh air, you exercise, you walk. The slough is about a mile and a half long, so you do exercising, you focus on a particular thing, and that is like meditation. You focus on trying to find birds and on hearing the sounds they make, on looking for the motions, and that focus you on some specific thing, and that will decrease your stress. And decreasing the stress helps alleviate depression, anxiety, and other emotional problems that you may have, because you're not thinking on your problems, right? You're thinking of this particular activity, and that is basically the definition of mindfulness. And it has been shown that this decreases cortisol in your system, and cortisol is a stress hormone. So if you decrease the cortisol, you decrease your heart rate, your respiratory rate, your insulin levels, your blood sugar, your cholesterol, and that is very helpful to you. So that's one of the benefits of birding, as with any other exercise that you do outside.
And it's a beautiful morning here. There's no humidity. The sun has just come up, and it's cool. It's probably about 69, 70 degrees. So it's just perfect weather for being out and about in Southwest Florida.
Definitely. So another benefit of birding is if you get interested in the birds, you start looking for things like, where do they come from? What's migration like? The taxonomy of the birds, the biology, the ecology, everything. So
educating yourself.
You're educating yourself. You're using your brain cells, and you're getting more and more intelligent. Okay, so that's another benefit. There is a condition. I'm a pediatrician, so I've read about something called nature deficit disorder, just like attention deficit disorder. And really, kids need to be outside more, get away from digital media and digital games and sitting down and doing nothing. They have to get outside and exercise in nature. So I would that's what I tried to do with starting the kids bird walks. Unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of kids coming, but when I posted in my Facebook page my outings with kids, a lot of adults started asking if they could come.
Okay.
So I switched and I opened it to everybody.
Okay.
So now mainly what I get is adults of all kinds of birding experience. Some are more experienced than others, but it's awesome to show somebody a bird, and they feel so good, and they're happy when they see something that they've never experienced before. So those are the typical benefits of birding. What was the other point?
So we're going on to the second one. What you need to start birding?
Well, basically, you don't need really anything to start birding. You can just go outside and look at whatever birds you find and try to identify them. But if you want to have a very meaningful and more complete experience, you should get binoculars.
Okay.
Because you can only see so much. Look at that hawk on that pine.
Yes.
Illuminated by the morning
Yes.
light.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Beautiful. And there was another one. It's a couple. Another one flew somewhere there. They have a nest in there. This is the time of year where a lot of birds are nesting. So that's interesting. So you need binoculars. Binoculars can cost from $150, and I'm talking about good binoculars, from $150 to $3,000. These are about $2,000 binoculars. But if you can afford it, get the best binoculars you can because you get a lot more light and you see the bird more clearly. Okay? But you can start off with a $150 pair or $300 pair, and it'll give you a lot of benefits. We can start going in there.
Sure.
Another thing that you would need for
I'm going to get on the side of you with the mic. All right, here we go.
beginning birders would be a guidebook.
Okay.
And there's a lot of guidebooks. There's a Kaufman guide to the birds. There's a Sibley guide to the birds. There's the National Geographic guide to the birds. Stokes. A good bird guide will help you identify birds because you should try to make a mental image of whatever bird you see, and a lot of people advocate to carry a sketchbook and maybe do a little drawing of a bird and put where you see the different colors and if they have like lines in the wings and eye rings, etc. And that will help you identify a bird that you've never seen before. Okay, so basically a bird guide and binoculars are the two basic things.
What do we got going on over here?
Where?
Right
Oh yeah, there's a couple of birds there. One of them is a limpkin. It's a medium-sized bird with a brown body and white spots on the back with a long decurved bill. That means that the bill is a curved bill pointing a little bit downwards. And right next to him is a white ibis, which is a beautiful bird with beautiful powder blue eyes, a red curved bill also.
They're down here feeding, having their breakfast.
Exactly. And these birds are here year-round. The limpkin is basically in the States, it's a Florida bird. You rarely see it out of Florida. So a lot of birders who like to travel and see other birds out of their local areas come here to Florida to see this bird. And it has a peculiar sound that sounds like a woman screaming. In Puerto Rico, we call it carrao, and that's the the sound it makes. Carrao, something like that. And here comes a little tricolored heron.
Look at that.
You see that?
It's just
Beautiful.
perched right up here on the boardwalk.
Exactly. And it's a young one because it's kind of brownish, the head. Eventually, it'll get like more bluish. So that's one of the 5 or 6 different types of wading birds that we have. We can hear the chips of warblers. And that's a very loud and low pitch sound. During the winter, we have visiting warblers. That's by the sound I can hear that it's a yellow rump warblers. But there's also palm warblers. We have black and white warblers, and a few other that increase during this time of year. We have like 3 different warblers that are in Florida year-round, but their numbers are augmented during the winter. So they come here in the fall, stay there in the winter, and then go back north in the spring to spend summers in their breeding areas. So it's basically the wonder of migration. So right now we have the most density of birds, except during a few weeks in migration time in fall and spring, where we get birds that may be here for a few weeks only, and then they keep on moving. So yeah, the equipment. Let's go back to the equipment. Binoculars, field guide. Right now, there's a lot of technical things that are new, like a lot of digital stuff. The guides, you can put them in an app in your phone. There are ways of identifying the birds from pictures. So if you take a picture. There's an app called Merlin that you can load it up and figure out what the bird is, and it's getting pretty good. It's artificial intelligence, so the more you use it, the better it gets. So you can take a picture of something that you don't know what it is, and it'll tell you. The same thing with sound. You can record a sound, and Merlin will tell you what the bird is.
Amazing.
That's amazing. So another thing you should have, if you want to up your game, like we say, a good camera. Mm-hmm. And people have bridge cameras, digital SLRs. They're very good for birding because another of the good things you get about birding is that birds are beautiful. They're in a beautiful setting, and you can take great pictures and then show it off to your friends, or like I do, make calendars and give them to your friends and colleagues as Christmas gifts. So that's basically the equipment that I would suggest you get. At least binoculars and a field guides. You could get something called a spotting scope, because sometimes you see birds that are kind of very distant, like ducks in a pond or shorebirds in the beach, and it's easier to look at them through a spotting scope. It's not a very necessary thing to have, but it's good to have. You're getting more into birding. Mm-hmm.
And those are all good things, and the price range is, whatever you want to spend.
It varies, exactly.
And and those apps are great. So what about hotspots in Lee County for birding?
Well, we are one of the best hotspots for woodland birds, okay? But Bunch Beach is a great hotspot for shorebirds. No, it's a very good diversity of shorebirds there. There is a walk that Bird Patrol does, but you have to go into leecountybirdpatrol.org to see the schedule of the bird walks. It depends on the time of the tides. So if it's a very low tide, the birds are going to be very distant. If it's a very high tide, you don't have enough beach for seeing a lot of shorebirds. So you have to time it like when the tide is around 1 foot more or less, and it's coming up. So go to leecountybirdpatrol.org and figure out when the shorebird walks at Bunch Beach are, and it's a very good experience. My friend Charlie Ewell leads that group, and he's very knowledgeable on shorebirds.
And time of day?
Time of day, it's very, it depends on what you want to see. If you want to see birds that feed at night, like owls, mm-hmm. You should probably, most owls, because there's some owls that are daytime, like the Cape Coral burrowing owls. You can see them at any time of day. Yeah. But some birds are easier at night, or you can hear them because they're more active during the night. But generally, early in the morning is a good time to walk when the sun's coming up, because the birds have been fasting and they want their breakfast, so they're very active. They're outside, and the insects are starting to move, and that's usually what they want. Mm-hmm. So time of day is very important. Time of year is very important because, like I just said, there are more birds here in the winter than in the summer, and the most birds you're gonna see, and the most variety of birds during migration, which could be 2 or 3 weeks during the fall or during the spring.
So we're kind of in between right now.
We're seeing the wintering birds, mm-hmm. the birds that are here as year-long residents, but we're also having a lot of birds that stay here during the winter. Mm-hmm. So I think this is the best time. Plus the temperatures are much better. The humidity is less. The other good birding spots here, Lakes Park, mm-hmm. and there's also a a walk. It's generally the first Saturday of the month, and another Bird Patrol member is usually leading, usually two of them. Marie De Rosa is the one that is in charge of that, but I help her sometimes and other bird patrollers, and it's very good. That's another great hotspot in Lee County, Lakes Park. Sometimes you see more birds because of the different habitats that you see there than here. So Bunch Beach, 6 Mile Cypress, Lakes Park, Harns Marsh is another great spot where you can see a lot of birds, especially the snail kite, which is another bird that people come from other states just to see that bird. The snail kite. It's another primary Florida bird. Florida is, you see that little warbler there?
I do. Oh.
So that's a palm warbler, because you see the tail flicking up and down.
Yes.
A palm warbler. So Harns Marsh is a very good park to go and watch birds. Unfortunately, see that beautiful little bird.
It is.
With the tail, underside the tail, the feathers are yellowish, and it flicks its tail up and down, and it's here all winter long. Another of those neotropical migrants. So the two most common warblers really are palm and the yellow rump warbler.
Okay.
Okay, so unfortunately, due to the hurricane, there's a lot of beaches that are closed. But Ding Darling in Sanibel, I hope they fix that soon so we can go back there, because it's a treasure. Mm-hmm. Ding Darling is really one of the greatest places that well recognized, and a lot of people go there to see a lot of good birds. The Lighthouse Park, another place that is close, but it's another treasure that we have. I hope it opens soon. So those are basically my favorite spots to bird here in Lee County.
And in the meantime, and you mentioned it earlier, people can come to the Slough.
Exactly. You don't know how much I suffered when we had the Slough closed, and we had Bunch Beach closed, and we had Lakes Park closed. They opened Lakes Park not too long ago, and immediately I went there, and I had my Lakes Park fix.
Good.
It's a privilege in terms of the situation, the geographical place, because we have a lot of birds that are coming from the Caribbean, Yucatan. So we may see birds that are very rare sometimes, and it's also always good to see different birds. We can talk about the special birds that are here. Limpkin, we already mentioned the limpkin. Limpkin is basically a tropical bird. You can only see it commonly in Florida, and a lot of people come here to see it. It was made famous by the Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan movies, because they filmed those movies in Central Florida, and you could hear limpkins, and the director thought it was it sounded very jungle-like, but he was not a birder, so he didn't know that bird is not found in the Congo. It's an American bird. It's, usually Central American, South American, and Florida bird. Rarely do you see it out of Florida. Another great bird is the short-tailed hawk. Short-tailed hawks, I think, breed in the Slough, and this is the northernmost part of its range. Okay, you would have to go to Central America again and northern South America to see that bird. So a lot of birders come to Florida to look for short-tailed hawk. The snail kites. The snail kite used to be called the Everglades kite, but it's not. It's not an Everglades bird. It's a tropical bird. You can see it in Cuba. You can see it in Panama. You can see it in a lot of South American and Central American countries. But in the North American continent, Florida is where you see it. Another bird is a swallowtail kite. That's a summer resident, and it's a beautiful bird. If you haven't seen them flying in the Florida skies, you haven't seen elegance. It's a very elegant, beautiful bird, and it's here from, like I said, from mid-February to August, and then it's gone. Mm-hmm. What other birds? Painted buntings.
Oh, I was just looking out here. It looked like there are some dark birds in the trees.
Yes, that's the anhinga. So they have very little oil in their feathers, because if they had oil, there would be more buoyant. So they want to go deep. When they dive for fish. They spear them with their pointy long bills, and if they had more oil, they couldn't go as deep as they go. Mm-hmm. So when they're out of the water, they have to spread their wings and dry out, because otherwise they couldn't fly.
And that's why its wings are spread. Exactly,
and that's an iconic Florida view. You go to a pond and you see one or two anhingas in any place in Florida, and it's another of those birds that are basically in Florida and a few surrounding states in the Gulf and Atlantic coast. Another bird that's similar to the anhinga is the crested cormorant, which is the feeding habits is similar because it's also a diving bird, but it has a little bit more buoyancy than the anhinga, and the bill is a little bit different. It has a little hook at the end. It doesn't have that spear.
I get them confused. So it's to look for the hook.
Yes.
And that's the cormorant.
And if you see a bird like that with white in the wings, black bird with white in the wings, that's an anhinga. The anhinga is the only bird that's its scientific name, common name, and family name is the same.
How about that?
It's anhinga, the scientific name. Anhingidae is a family, and the common name is the anhinga. And anhinga comes from a native South American word. Okay, so that's a little thing about the anhinga.
That's good trivia.
Good trivia
I like
question.
that.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
Before I interrupted you, you were talking about pink.
Oh no, a painted bunting.
Painted bunting. Okay.
Painted bunting is another bird that you can see here. It breeds up in the north, but it's one of the most beautiful birds you see in Florida in the winter. It has red, blue, green, yellow. It's a small bird. It's about the size maybe of smaller than a dove, really. But it's a beautiful bird that you can see here. Lake Spark used to be you used to see it last year. There were a few there that made the delights of everybody that saw it. But it's a common feeder bird. So you may go to different feeders in rural areas where there's a lot of vegetation, and because they like to hide, they go to the feeders, they eat, and then they hide. But you can see them in other places. They like drier areas, not so much like here in the slough. The slough is wet, so that's another thing. You have when you identify birds, you have to think about four things: size and shape, color, behavior, and habitat. So those are the things you have to look for when you want to identify birds, because that will get you to a proper ID. Other birds that are interesting here, roseate spoonbill. A lot of people see them near the ditches and at the road. You know, they're feeding on the ditches and in the water in the ditches, and it's a beautiful bird, pink. A lot of people see it and they say, "Oh, that's a flamingo," but no, it's a roseate spoonbill. Ding darling. It's a good place to see them. But sometimes if you come here to the Slough around 5:30, 6 p.m., you're going to see these trees where we are seeing the anhinga now, full of white, black, and some pink birds, because they will stay there for the night. Okay.
And we're here at the amphitheater.
At the amphitheater
the
of 6 Mile Cypress Slough.
And it just looks is a pond, a lake.
This is a man-made lake. Basically, they took the rock here to build 75, and they just made a pit here, and it filled with water, and we have this beautiful pond here.
And the slough is open from dawn to dusk.
Exactly.
So you can come out on the boardwalk anytime.
And look at right now we're having owls out. Two kinds of owls: the barred owl and the screech owl. And most people, you know, if you come here, you may see it, or if you don't see it, come another day. You may see it because, you know, it's like Forrest Gump said, birding is like a box of chocolates, right? You never know what you're gonna get. But you will always find something fascinating here.
And how to meet other local birders and learn from them.
Okay, so I'm part of a club, the Calusa Bird Club, that's been in Fort Myers since 1958, and our motto is "No bird left behind," right? It's basically a seasonal club. I'm here year round, but there's a lot of members that are snowbirds. Okay, but we meet right now. We're meeting here at the building in 6 Mile Cypress. Once a month we meet, and then we do trips to different places, mostly in Lee County, but we visit other places. We're gonna stay in February in Merritt Island area. So we're gonna visit there. We did a trip to St. Mark's, which was spectacular, and we have a lot of great birders there that are ready to show their knowledge and help you figure out what the birds are and give you tips on better birding. Okay, so that's a great place to start. You can also be part of the American Birding Association. You can join them. You'll get their magazines. They also have trips, international trips, and you can go to birding festivals. There's a lot of birding festivals year-round in Florida. You can go to birding festivals in other places. That's one way I started learning about different birds in North America, because I went to the Monterey Birding Festival, the San Diego Birding Festival. There's one up in Maine that's awesome, the Acadia Birding Festival. There used to be one in Merritt Island, which closed down, but they're trying to revive it. It's a Space Coast Birding Festival that used to be in January. So that was one of the best and the first birding festival that I did. So you can expand your birding, not just do it here. You can go other places. I've traveled the world looking for birds.
And in February, the Burrowing Owl Festival.
The Burrowing Owl Festival. I'm going to be a part. And Charlie Ewell is going to be a part. We're going to show some birds and the beautiful little burrowing owl. And we're going to have fun.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
That's very...
We can hear titmice right now. That chi-chi-chi-chi that you heard, that's titmice. Okay. So it's very birdy right now around here.
Did you say birdie or birdie?
Birdie. Lots of little birds.
So I was looking at backyardbirdwatchers.com,
Mm-hmm.
and according to this bird watching site, 67 million people are bird watchers. What are we looking at?
There's a common yellowthroat that just go there. Common yellowthroats are very common in Florida. They're a resident bird, but we don't see it at the slough often during the summer. They're more inland. And it's a beautiful bird. It's all yellow underneath, brownish in the back, and it has a mask. Like a Lone Ranger mask. The male does, and it's a cute bird. It's gone now, but it was there.
And
it's the one that you hear.
And what was the name again?
Common yellowthroat.
Common yellowthroat.
Because it's all yellow in the throat and up to the chest. Okay,
So according to backyardbirdwatchers.com, about since the pandemic, about 67 million people consider themselves bird watchers, and younger people are getting interested and are increasing those numbers.
the younger you are, the better, because you're gonna have a list very long if you keep it up, and lists are something that like true birders like. I divide birders from bird watchers, because bird watcher can be anybody. So I don't know if those numbers are real, because
Okay.
you can have a feeder and just watch the birds that are in the feeder. But if you're a birder, I think birders are more into seeing a lot of birds, reading about the life cycle of the bird, the natural history of the birds, getting interested in the ecology around the bird, and all those little details that usually people who are not really birders don't care about.
Mm-hmm.
They like the beauty of the birds, but they don't go a step beyond. When you go a step beyond and look for all those things, and you start investing more time and effort into your bird watching, then you can consider yourself a birder.
A birder. So there is a difference, and that makes sense.
There is a difference. And birding can take you different places. It can help you make friends with other people. I met the chairman of the Nobel Prize for Medicine in a birding trip, and I said, I'm gonna submit to you my resume. No, I'm kidding. But he's a great birder. He's one that has like a big number. I mean, there's 10,000 birds, around 10,000 birds, maybe 11,000, or because they start knowing more about the birds. They are separating some birds, which in the past you would say that it's just one species. They may separate it in 2 or 3 different species. But that's another thing. 10,000 birds, more or less.
Okay.
So you have a finite number that you can shoot for. Right now, I'm around 3,300 birds.
Really?
Okay, but you have to go out of your local
Yes,
area,
yes.
because say here in the slough we have maybe 200, 250 birds that are seen, that have been recorded here. And those numbers you can get from eBird, which is great. If you're going to be a birder, you want to have a list, and you can put it in eBird, and you help the scientific community know what number of birds are in different places. So you can shoot for a number. You try to get those 10,000 birds, but you're going to have to go South America, Asia, other places, because in North America alone, you can see about maybe 600 birds. In the U.S., that's the maximum number. If you take, for example, Colombia, which is a country the size of Texas, they have about 1,900 birds.
No kidding.
So it's all location, location, location.
And it's one more way to get out of your comfort zone.
Exactly.
And experience travel.
Other cultures. Foods. Habitats, and make friends. I've made one of the first places I visited, because I'm from Puerto Rico and I've always wanted to go to Cuba, was Cuba. We did bird census It was a U.S. sanctioned trip because we were doing some scientific research. So we did bird census in different places in Cuba. And I made a friend who's now a very good friend. He was a scientist. He was a paleoornithologist, actually. He discovered a lot of extinct birds in the caves of Cuba. But he was eking out a living by guiding Americans that went to Cuba to bird. So he decided to come to the U.S. and he would get permits to go to different museums. And he was in a museum in Canada. I'm not sure where it was, but he made the jump from Canada to New York. And then he asked for asylum. And eventually, he brought his family. I helped him bring his family by being a sponsor. And he now is leading groups to Jamaica, Puerto Rico, and Bahamas. And he can't go to Cuba yet, but eventually I'm sure he's going to go. I met the guy who wrote the book on Cuban birds, Arturo Kirkconnell. He's a very good friend of mine. And so you meet a lot of great people, and birders are usually a very nice bunch.
Mm-hmm. I would think so. What are some of your favorite birds?
Well, any bird that's in front of my binoculars is my favorite bird at the time. But I have a couple here in Fort Myers. I already told you one of them, the short-tailed hawk is a beautiful hawk. It comes in two flavors. You can see it very dark or pale. Okay, the swallowtail kite is another of my favorites. The most beautiful bird, I think, in Florida is the painted bunting because of its very bright colors. The Puerto Rican toddy is really, it has to be number one in my list. It's a small bird, looks like a green ping pong ball with a very red throat. And it's always looking up because it's looking for insects under the leaves, and it's a tiny bird, and it's endemic of Puerto Rico. And the toddies are a family of birds that are only found in the Greater Antilles. So Hispaniola has two of them, Cuba has one, Jamaica has one, and Puerto Rico has one.
I just want to wrap this up by saying, for more information on guided walks along the boardwalk and other programming and interpretive center hours, please visit the website leagueof.com/parks/parks/6 Mile Cypress. It's really two parks, people. Or Google 6 Mile Cypress Slough Preserve. And this is one of the gems of the Lee County Parks and Recreations Department. And there's also the Friends of 6 Mile Cypress Slough Preserve's website, and that is sloughpreserve.org. And the Friends Group is a not-for-profit advocacy and support organization committed to preserving, protecting, and promoting the slough for future generations. And they also have a Facebook page, and that is worth checking out just to find out more of the history and the Monday group and how the slough got started. And I want to thank you again, Dr. Jose Padilla-Lopez, for being a guest. You're a great resource. We're going to take a picture here. And I know when visitors visit the slough, they will seek you out for more questions. And but thanks again for being part of this.
Every second Saturday of the month until summer, maybe that would be about April, I'll be doing the bird walks. Okay. So anybody who comes can join.
Cool. All right.
And the first Saturday of the month at Lakes Park, and the beach, the Bunch Beach ones, you have to look them up at leecountybirdpatrol.org because they are tide dependent, and you never know.
You never know. Okay. Fair enough. Okay, Shellcast, the award-winning podcast of Fort Myers, islands, beaches, and neighborhoods, is produced by the Lee County Visitor and Convention Bureau in Fort Myers, Florida, and it's available wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and it's also on visitfortmyers.com. I'm Jackie Parker. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you again next time.
Cool.
you.